Hey, hello everyone. So it's time for a student president Q&A. If you'd all like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Phoebe. I'm president of the Students' Union.
I'm Evie. I'm president of Inclusivity and Diversity. I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Simeon. I'm president of education and my pronouns are he, him.
Hi, I'm Alice. I'm president of activities and my pronouns are he, they.
And I'm Sian, president of sport, and my pronouns are she, her.
Very lovely. So I guess we'll start with the very first question that we got asked. And surprisingly, it's, can you tell me what is the student union? I guess we better give this one to Phoebe if you'd just like to explain.
Everybody's really happy with that. What a question. So the Students' Union is, a lot of people see the Students' Union as the building, but a Students' Union is actually there to represent students on any of their kind of issues or concerns. The main thing that we do is, obviously we can lobby government, we can lobby other bodies, but mainly we lobby the university on students' behalf, and we make change. And we work with students on lots of campaigns. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that a little bit, but that's basically what a Students' Union does. It's not just Sank and Spa, it's all of us and all of the team behind us as well that make sure your voice is heard and that you're represented.
I think you really just hit the nail on the head there. I can see everyone's amazed with such a great explanation. Okay, so this is going to be a bit more of an open question, but obviously we are in a COVID-19 pandemic, and I imagine that's affected you guys quite heavily with meetings, kind of getting around and seeing students. So how has the pandemic affected your role, and how did you work around it? If we would, Ellis, would you like to start us off with your answer for this one?
So my role was quite heavily affected by COVID, and especially with Sian as well, because obviously we're all at home. You don't have people running around in field doing lacrosse. You don't have people meeting up and watching Doctor Who. It's very much changed. So with that, we all agreed in the beginning when we started into our roles that it sort of became president first, activities, sports second, and what we could do to focus on that. So some things I did was myself and Phoebe thought when we had that Hull the Head scandal regarding security on campus, we went to the university first and we were fighting for that and fighting for students to be heard. We're focusing on other things, so like the Students First campaign. So we're looking at like nationally, like universities being funded properly, making sure students are getting value for money, making sure that tuition fees, like if we can get them lowered, we will be fighting to get them lowered. So it's just really thinking about, I was elected into a position to lead. So it's just leading on different projects because we can't get together and do things, but then making sure that I'm still there to support online and make sure that if anyone needs a hand on anything, I'm just there on Facebook or my emails. You can just get in touch with me quite quickly. So yeah, that's pretty much the main way that I've had to adapt heavily for COVID.
I think that's definitely the same with sports, as Ellis mentioned at the beginning. Like we kind of came in with a manifesto that we couldn't necessarily do to what we wanted to do anymore. So we definitely did have to put our president part of our role first. And as Ella said, he's been working on like other campaigns, and then for us, we normally put on, for example, awareness months. We normally do a lot of sporting events around that, a lot of charity events around that. But this year it has had to be all online. So we're looking at obviously providing sporting resources for those awareness months and doing different charity fundraising, but online. So it has got the same kind of atmosphere around it, but everything has been mainly virtual. So it's been incredibly different, especially with sports, because we've literally had maybe 6 weeks worth at max of sport, and even then it was very restricted for some sports. So it has been very different, but I can't commend the AU and the sporting environment around Hull enough for kind of adapting to that and picking themselves back up when obviously the government said you can't do anything. So yeah, big shout out to the AU for that one.
Yeah, and I think as well, to add to that, Joe, I think, I mean, it goes without saying that sports and activities was massively impacted by COVID. I think it's really clear to students why that would be the case, but also for me and Evie and Simeon, it's massively impacted our roles as well. You know, we came into this, like Sean and Ellis have said, with manifestos and what we wanted to do and with plans for the year. And obviously lockdown happened in March, and everything that we'd written in our manifesto and were elected on just beforehand was kind of out the window a little bit. And there's a lot of those things that we've still worked on, but like Sean and Alice said, there was priorities that had to come in first. So, you know, me and Simeon and Evie had our own ideas that we wanted to come in with, but instead we had to focus on blended learning and making sure that that was working in a way that was working for students. We had to represent students on no detriment. We had to represent students on the library opening times, you know, fighting for accommodation fee waivers, lobbying local accommodation providers to make sure they're being fair to students who can't return for whatever reason. And I think it has definitely been a really challenging year. It's been a really difficult year to be a president of anything. It's definitely a year that has never happened before and probably will never happen in the same way again. But I think we've all done, you know, a really good job, worked as a team and done everything that we can to make sure that we're putting students' priorities first, because I think student priorities have changed as well. There are things that we were elected on that they would have wanted us to do, but actually more important things have come up since that we've had to do that. But it has sort of felt a little bit like putting out fires left, right and centre sometimes. You'd come into work one week and the guidance changes so much and the laws change so much, then we just have to keep adjusting and changing everything that we do and changing our plans every week. So you've just got to be flexible, but it's been a challenge, but it's, you know, it's still been great. We've still tried our best to talk to students in whatever way we can and to get their feedback and to make sure that their voices and their concerns are heard by the uni.
I just want to say as well, a massive thank you to you guys. I understand that, you know, this year has not been ideal, but as someone who has involved in the union, in sports teams, in societies, you guys have made this year extremely more pleasant than it probably should have been. You've all done absolutely fantastic, and I just want to say thank you for making this year good. Like, just thank you for that.
Well done,
Okay,
Sean and
right.
Ellis.
I will actually cry, so
Okay, I'll hold back being nice for a minute. I
the
don't want anyone to cry
niceties.
right
Don't
now.
be too nice to us.
So, as we're aware, we are getting to the end of your term time as a student president, as being elected. How do you plan to ensure what you're working on will be followed up by those who take over your plan for next year? Because I'm aware that obviously you may have not gotten to achieve everything you wanted to, so there'd be a sense of like wanting to carry on and keep pushing what you're doing. Eve, if you would like to actually start us off with this, because we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think one of the ways of doing this, because I've had exactly the same thing as you, Joe, as the months have come to an end, I've sort of thought, okay, well, I've got to try and make sure that my hard work comes to something, regardless of what happens next year. So there's sort of democratic ways you can do that. So the representative body, union council, which some students might know, some students might not, if you pass a motion, which can be it's to lobby for the university to do something. So when I was a student, it was about consent training. There's been ones about sustainability, all sorts of ones that are about the union has to do something. So if that motion gets voted in by the student representatives, that's something we're mandated to do. So it fits into your remit and you have to do it. So part of it is being sneaky and thinking, I'll try and pass a motion around my campaigns, because then it will get carried on to the next student president, and whatever their priorities are, that will fit into their remit. So there's democratic ways of doing it like that. I think a lot of this year I've spent getting data from various things. And so hopefully that means that it will be easier in the future for someone to have something to work with if they've got student backing, if they've got data. So I've spent a lot of this year, people have seen I'm like Survey Central, and because I need the data, and it's that data will obviously then be, you know, I want to keep really good records and keep it preserved, and then hopefully the next person can do it. and use that information, and they don't have to start it again. They've just got the backing for it. So I think it's motions, it's keeping really good records, which I've really tried to do. And when we, if there's a handover to 2021 to 2022 presidents, really making sure that all the things you've learned and that you want to prioritise is handed over and explained well to whoever comes into the post next year. So there's those internal ways. And I guess as well, it's making awareness of your campaigns and making sure students are on board, because if you get people involved, they will then want to carry on as well. And there are students I know that are first years, second years, that are going to be here next year, and they care about the campaigns. And if they feel updated and they feel involved, then whoever's in the roles will have to represent students, and if that's what students still want. So there's those internal ways. And any student that's watching this, you can pass a motion. It's not just a president thing to do. So you can pass a motion as well. So there's those sort of internal ways, and there's the general more cultural thing. If you get students to care about something, then we have to represent those students. So a bit of a waffly answer, but hopefully that helps explain it a little bit where I'm coming from.
Oh, that helps explain things amazingly well. Honestly, thank you for sharing all that information, because the chances are a lot of people are probably unaware that they can pass motions and just are unaware in general about how everything runs. Simeon, I could see you unmuted there for a second. Is there something you would like to add?
Yeah, I was just the only point I wanted to dwell on really was the fact that I don't think anything like any of the work that we do that students are passionate about is ever really gonna die, even if we move on. So the most important thing about the Students' Union is the students at the end of the day. And so far students are passionate about anything, it doesn't matter who's in the roles. It's either you're gonna do it or somebody's gonna do it. Like students are very much capable of doing stuff themselves. I mean, I think it's a privilege that we're here to represent them, not the other way around. It's not like if we're not here, then students' hands are going to suddenly get tied. So the most important thing is always about students being confident and being able to raise their voices to whatever issues or concerns are around them, and basically give us that privilege really to be involved and support them as best as we can. So that is always for me the most important thing with students' unions. If that keeps happening, then nothing that we do really is going to not get done at the end of the day, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Simeon. That's a really good way of saying things, and I don't think anyone could have said that better. Okay, so moving on to the next fun list of questions I have here. This one will be interesting. So, can you tell me one change you would love to see happen within the union or the university as a whole? I know this is going to be a tough one, and you might need to think for a second. So I'll just give you a second to have a think about it as I just talk, because I know that's quite a big one. Does anybody feel brave to go first for this one?
I mean, I'm quite brave personally. I've got like, do you need a list, or does it have to be one thing? Can't it be like 2, 3, 4? Okay, so since I've been here as sabbatical officer, I guess one of the first things I was sure from the start that I was going to work on was the BAME awarding gap, particularly I think data suggests, for those who don't know what the BAME awarding gap is, it's basically a gap that shows that data suggests across HUs, not just in Hull, across the higher education sector in the UK, that BAME students are about over 12% much more likely to graduate with a 2 or 3rd class than their white counterparts. And it appears to not be declining, if that makes sense. And then in some universities, if you drill to particular ethnicities, some do worse like others. Like other universities, their main problem is like the Asian awarding gap, or things like that. But at Hull, it's particularly the Black awarding gap, and that Black students tend to perform lesser than everyone else across the piece. And so, yeah, during the pandemic T2, that's the second trimester of 2019-2020 academic year, even though data suggests that Black students actually did their best over and above their white counterparts and every other ethnic group within the main group of students. They still graduated with worse outcomes than the previous year. And for me, that means that the issue is getting worse, not better. And if there's anything that I would really love to see changed at all, it will be that, because the consequences that that has for employability once students graduate with a 2 to a 3rd class, there'll be no confidence to even go for a postgrad. Somebody might suggest, why don't you go for a postgraduate? But if I graduate with a 2-2, I'm not thinking I'm going to do a postgraduate degree. I'll be thinking that'll be a waste of my money, because, so I do think that that needs to be rectified. Really, yeah. I mean, I've done what I can. I guess I'm about to cross my line. Those who know, who have tried to follow up with what I'm doing, know that I've done what I can. But I would really love to see that dealt with appropriately, without going into any more details than that. But yeah.
Thank you, Simeon. Really educational there. I wasn't aware of that before, so thank you for that. That's something I've learned from today. Phoebe, I've seen you've unmuted if you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, so I'm going to be a typical politician. I'm not going to say that this would be the only thing that I change, but I'm just going to name one thing that I would change, and it's a very vague thing, so I apologize for that. But I think something that I would definitely want to see, and bear in mind, it would be different if we weren't in this COVID world anyway. But I think that what we're lacking as a university and a union altogether is that real sense of community and feeling like students really come to Hull and feel like they belong here and like they belong to something bigger than themselves. And I think that has a massive, the reason why I think that's important is because I think it has a massive impact on international students, has a massive impact on mature students and foundation students, and everybody really getting involved in their communities. It really has an impact on students getting involved in the Students' Union and really engaging in things that we do, getting involved in sports and societies. It has a massive impact on their mental health. And I think it's a really big thing, and it's a huge thing to try and achieve in 1 or even 2 years, because it's kind of a culture change within the university and the union. And we are in really unique positions because we have to work with the university on things but also hold them to account. So it is very difficult because we have to be critical of them but also work with them to get things done. And obviously ultimately they fund us, so it is a really complicated and complex relationship that we have with them. But through working in partnership with them, there are lots of really good things that we can achieve. I would really like to see students have a relationship with their with academics and with their teachers and their tutors and their personal supervisors that's really healthy and really beneficial to them. There's so much more that you can get from coming to university than just a degree, and there's so many ways that you can really make the most of your experience here, but only if it really feels like a community and all of those different aspects across the institution work together. If it's really clear that your personal supervisors have really good links with the mental health support team and really good links with the Students' Union and really good links with Student Futures, which is the careers team, that's how you get the most out of your experience. So it's a really complicated issue, and I'm sure every student knows that there are communication issues across the university. You can go to several different teams and several different systems and find out different stuff, and that is the first thing that I would want to try and resolve, the fact that it needs to be streamlined and you should be able to go to one single online server or service. This is really boring, I'm so sorry, but it is a massive issue. The fact that you go to so many different portals just to find something out is such a pain. Like, students don't need to do that. They just want it to be easy and simple and to go to one place, and for all the communication to be clear and coming from one place consistently. So that would be the main thing that I'd do, because then everybody would know what's available to them and they could really make the most of the opportunities that are at Hull.
Thank you. Honestly, that's amazing. Sorry, I'm just blown away by the elegance of that answer. Like, generally, like, such a solid answer. Eve, I see you're unmuted if you want to go.
Yeah, I think for me it's well, I'd say particularly it's sort of our Black, Asian, minority, ethnicity students and their relationship with student services. So whether that be things like the mental health team, the disability inclusion team, the processes if they want to report something that's gone wrong or discrimination. So I was just going to say Black, Asian, minority, ethnicity, mental health, but there's a few sort of things off that. So anyone will know that's a big thing that, you know, if you're on my social media, that's the big thing that I post about. And I think if I'm going to be sort of brutally honest, I think sometimes a community, particularly the Black community, has been left behind or has relied on the students pushing things forward and not necessarily been taken on by staff. And I think there is a bit of a change happening. I think there is more priority happening. But what I would say is we need to make sure that, and I think I mean, you can see it'll be up on the website soon. It's on my social media. The results show that a lot of students aren't necessarily aware of the support services. They're not aware of the training they undergo, and there is still a gap in the training. And it can be difficult to go to somebody, for example, and talk about your experience of something like racism if you don't feel like they're going to understand you, have lived experience, have the training. And it's, you know, from my perspective, it's completely understandable that some students don't feel comfortable accessing that service. So we need to really shine a light on what exists that might make students feel comfortable and then fill the gaps. So that's part of that campaign there. Is I'd really like those students to want to and feel comfortable accessing the service, and then you can say more about what's going wrong. So part of that is the mental health team, because we do have a not very diverse mental health team. They do have training in different areas. Not necessarily everyone knows that training, and even so, you might not feel necessarily comfortable going to a white cis man, for example, if you don't feel like they understand your experience, if that's not, you know, someone that represents you. And I think the other part of that with student services is we do have ways that if a student has experienced discrimination, hate crime, etc., they can go to certain services, but we're not very good at talking about what exists. So the Students' Union Advice Centre is actually a hate crime reporting centre. So if you don't want to report a hate crime, you can go there and they'll give you the support to fill out the form. There's also a number of volunteers at university who are called Dignity and Respect Advisors, and on a voluntary basis, they're also staff, but they have this position as well. You can get advice if you've experienced something and you want to get advice about the processes. So the stuff like that exists that we don't talk about, and there's still gaps and there's still room for more. There's still room for more people who are experts, particularly on racism, particularly on those sorts of issues. And we need to fill in those gaps and also talk about what's already there that's good. So we need to do both of them. And I really want by the end of this year, particularly more Black, Asian, minority ethnic students to feel comfortable accessing these services and to actually have a bit of change that means that they're better to access and they are more specialist support. They've done it in other student unions, and I think we should do it here, to be honest. So I'm quite passionate about lobbying for that.
Once again, just a solidly amazing answer. As someone who has made use of kind of the mental health support services and has had issues just finding things through all these different portals, these answers just really just sing home of would be just some truly amazing things. Sian, Ellis, is there anything you want to add?
Ellis, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Well, I feel like I can answer for both of us on this one in the sense of more funding to sports and activities and free sports and activities. So like if the university were to fund us and then all students can access sports and sports facilities and all things beautiful and put money into like the society's grant and the sports grant and just make our groups like free and accessible to everyone, so that way if you're coming to university and you're from like a lower income background and spending that money is a bit more of a worry, you wouldn't have to worry. You'd be able to be like, oh, I'll join 10 societies and 15 sports teams and have no time to actually do my degree. That's what I want. Although I do want you to do your degree, I want you to have fun. And that'd be just the best.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo that. Obviously, more money would be amazing. I also kind of want to jump on Phoebe's point as well of like the community feel and getting those links with the university to make it more of a group approach to in the sporting sense, look at kind of rebranding what sport is at Hull and how people not only like look at it, but also like respect it as well as a kind of massive part of a lot of student experience. So Books released a paper that I always go on about in meetings and stuff for the about around the value of sport on student experience. So kind of looking at that and the layout of that and how we can improve each section. So for example, they have a recruitment section, a retainment section, physical health and well-being section. So all of these different things that maybe we're as a not only a union but as a university are maybe lacking. For example, you don't see Hull as a sporting university, for example, but the amount of sporting opportunities that we have and the level of sport that we're playing at and representing can't be overlooked. And just because we're not necessarily a sporting university doesn't make us any less amazing at sport, if that makes sense. So for me, it would be kind of rebranding it as maybe not your typical sporting university, but looking at those recreational sports, as Ellis said, maybe the free sports that break the barriers down to participation, looking at retainment, looking at how sport and being a part of something makes your student experience so much better that you want to stay. You are motivated to do your degree because you know you've got training on a Tuesday night, so you need to get your essay done by the Monday afternoon, that kind of thing. And just looking at all the benefits of sport and how the university can maybe support us a little bit more, maybe on the financial side, maybe on the I don't know, social media side, maybe on the kind of coverage side. But yeah, those are the kind of things that I would want to look at, like looking forward and people in the roles going on from me.
Once again, just a fantastic round of answers. Thank you for all of this. I'm sure everyone who will watch this or kind of read the closed captions or just kind of, I'm sure everyone will get something from this. I found this really to be kind of almost inspiring in a sense. I'm like, yeah, go on, Hull. We're going to be great. All right. So moving on to the next question. I think this is one that will surprise a lot of people. How do you collaborate with each other as student presidents, and what are some examples of your collaboration? Because I think sometimes people see the student presidents as like an island where they don't really, it's like they do sport, this is the president of education, and there's kind of no mix between. But obviously I'm aware that behind the scenes there is a lot of collaboration with ideas and supporting each other. Would anyone like to jump in on this?
Yeah, so yeah, I do agree. Lots of people see us as kind of like 5 separate, distinct roles that don't interact at all. It's just really not the case. In fact, it's totally the opposite, and especially this year as well. It's definitely the opposite. I would say that no individual. I think every individual president is as strong as the whole team, because I think we all rely on each other a lot. But we work together on so much. We work together every day. We meet really regularly, and we all will collaborate on various different things. So me and Evie have worked a lot together this year on sexual violence and consent, but also mental health. Me and Simeon have worked together a lot this year on blended learning and no detriment. Me and Ellis has already picked up on the things that we've been doing together, and me and Sean are now getting to work together as well in terms of One Hull of a Woman and planning for kind of some of the more exciting in-person events that we can do when we get back to it, if it all goes to plan. And you know, various other people have been working together as well. You know, Evie and Simeon working together on a lot of things to do with how blended learning and the pandemic and online learning has impacted international students, but also students from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background, or, you know, just various different things. So we all work together a lot, and particularly this year where it has been very much, okay, there's this massive issue that is impacting all students that we all need to really plough our energy into, because that's more important than this, that, or the other that we would normally be doing. It has happened more, but yeah, we're definitely not single entities. We definitely work together a lot.
Sorry, Eve, there's something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with everything Phoebe said, because I think it's even more so when there's COVID, which isn't anyone's remit. So we ought, do you know what I mean? There's loads of unforeseen stuff that was never put into anyone's remit. So we've had to work together on that a lot. I think the other thing is as well, we've recently updated the standing orders, which is basically the role descriptions and the expectations of the president roles. And one really nice thing that's come out of that is that there's loads of collaborative working. So, like, I've worked with Simeon on, well, Simeon's done a lot of it, but I like to think I've done a little bit of stuff around decolonising the curriculum and awarding gap type stuff, because it does overlap, because it is around inclusivity, it is about, you know, liberation and stuff. But that was never officially written into my job, if that makes sense. So there was nothing to say that I had to do that. But now a lot of the things will say, for example, the president of inclusivity and diversity from this year forward will work or co-lead with the president of education on awarding gaps. So there's loads of stuff now that is written in that I think is really positive, because it means those massive topics will now be covered by two presidents and is an official part of their role. And I think as well, a lot of the team, to their credit, have made their job a lot more than what it is. And I think Sian's a really good example, because Sian's done stuff around a trans inclusion policy in sport, which isn't in her role description. It's not something she had to do, but that's obviously, you know, collaborated with me on that and that sort of thing. So there's opportunities, I think, where especially this year, Sian and Ellis have had to be quite inventive, and think, okay, we can't actually physically get out there, but we can make sports more inclusive while we're waiting, or we can make activities better in this way or that way. So there's loads of ways where you can look beyond your horizons and then go, okay, well, we can do this thing. I can make sports more than just organising sports events. It can be, how are we making sports inclusive? How are we making sports employable? And but yeah, and I think with the new role descriptions, it will be even more, as I was saying earlier, Joe, like everything, as long as it's recorded, written in role descriptions, that's how it continues and campaigns aren't dropped. So when it's written in and it has been written and approved, you know, there'll be even more collaborative working, which I think is really, really good.
Simeon, go ahead.
Yeah, like I was just going to add that one of the things that we do as sabbatical officers, or as president says, for each of our objectives, goals that we set out to achieve, one big piece of it is trying to understand what parts of the university you need to raise these issues with, or where this needs to go, what do you need to do with this sort of thing. And part of that kind of strategic thinking is thinking who you need to work with regards to this. Like Evie and Phoebe already alluded to, some of the work around the BAME rewarding gap is not just with academic and teaching staff. There's lots of other underlying issues that also further that gap. There's the fact that BAME students tend to feel kind of isolated and excluded from the rest of their peers, because there's just them in their cohort most of the time, or maybe one or two of them as part of their cohort, and then that kind of leads to issues of loneliness and sense of belonging and all of that. So whilst the data would suggest that students find their sense of identity, kind of identify more with their course or program than with the university. So people feel, I'm a biochemist first, then I don't think it works the same way with BAME students, because of that particular thing. You see what I mean? So there are lots of other issues, and it's trying to think about how we kind of support those students, you know, within our various areas, what things in student services need to look at these issues, what parts of the academic side of things do we need to be looking at to raise this sort of issue. So it's just an example, really, just to put things in a bit more context, some of the thinking that goes behind some of the things we do. So it might not always look like it, but we're always thinking, what do we need to do? And sometimes if we're not going to work in partnership, we're always happy to throw ideas like, you could do this, or ask questions like, do you guys think this is a good idea? So that is also part of still working together, even though we're not necessarily heavily involved, because it's always important to still allow individuals to have that space to express themselves. I think that's very important still. But we're always running things past each other every now and again here. So.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Surprisingly, people aren't aware of what does the union have to do with the university? How do they work together? I'm sure you've all been asked this question countless times. Phoebe, I guess this is really the question for you here.
Yes, so I've kind of alluded to it a little bit already. It's a very complex relationship that we have. My hand just disappeared. That we have with the university, because, yeah, like I say, we're there to criticise them and to lobby them and to hold them to account. But equally, there are lots of things that we work together on. So it's entirely possible that you could be in one meeting in the morning saying, we don't really like how you're doing this, or students don't like how you're doing this, and we're telling you not to do it like this anymore, can you do it like this instead? And then in the afternoon you might be working with members of university staff on a totally different project. And I think the main, as well as that, there's also things that we have to do. So there are things that we have to work with them on and committees that we have to go to. I think a lot of students don't realise how many meetings and committees you have to go to as in these roles, you know, massive kind of decision-making bodies at the university that myself and Simeon and Evie get invited to particularly. And me and Simeon seem to be at all of them. And it's a little bit exhausting sometimes, but this is where most of the decisions get made. So it's important, obviously, that we have student representation there. But I think that the main thing that maybe students don't necessarily always realise, and that I think, if we're being honest, we didn't necessarily fully understand until we came into this role, and I think most past presidents would say the same, is that you don't really realise just how many people you will touch base with in the university. It's not just a case of working with the leadership team or the vice chancellor. You'll be talking to everybody from all different areas, so from student services and from Hull Sport in Sean's case, and from associate deans of education and associate deans of student experience, and various different people. So you'll work with hundreds of different colleagues in the university, and like I say, it's entirely possible that you'll be in meetings where sometimes you're just there because they've maybe asked for student input. Sometimes you'll call a meeting because there's something that you need to feedback on, or that you're not happy with how it's going and you want to say, I'm not happy with this isn't working for students, we need to change it. And that's a lot of it. But then there'll also be times when you'll be leading on a project. So for example, a couple of things that I've been doing this year, one is a work stream around mental health and how we can really improve student mental health through community techniques. So rather than it all being targeted at individual kind of treatment, therapy, support, how can we do that through kind of peer support and working as a community to kind of deliver that support and to create a campus where everybody has a good understanding of what it means to kind of have a focus on well-being and incorporate it as part of your day-to-day life. So that's one of the things, but I'm leading on that project, but most of the members of that work stream are university staff who I'm working with, because obviously it's only through working with the mental health and wellbeing support team and through student life as well as the union that we really get the best outcome for students. And another thing that I've been working on this year was writing the new student experience strategy. And this is like a really bizarre thing. It's never been done before. And I don't know if it's been done at any other students' union, but the university obviously writes a number of different strategies for different areas. So, but this year they asked if I could write the student experience one. So I've basically been writing a strategy for the university. But the reason why they asked me to do that was because it gets a proper student perspective and hopefully will encompass a little bit better what students really want and what student experience really means to students. But that meant that me and Ellis and Sean and a couple of other members of the Students' Union staff team were working with the university to kind of pull that work together. So you work with the university every day. We work with the university just as much as, if not more than, the members of the Students' Union staff. As representatives, we work more closely with them than we would with some of our own staff team, for example, like the commercial staff, who we don't necessarily have much communication with, except for if we're putting on an event or something like that. So I think sometimes it can be really difficult for students to get their heads around it, and it's difficult for representatives to get their heads around, but we are essentially working in partnership with and working with people who are also working against, in a way, which is weird, but it's trying to get your head around the fact that the university is a massive institution with lots of different people. You'll come across some people who you don't agree with and who you want to fight against, and others who are great and do a really fantastic job and genuinely have students' best interests at heart. And I think that's the lesson that we all learned probably in our first week in this job, of kind of don't see the university as this one institution where everybody's the same. There are lots of different people there, all with their own different personalities and their own different professional opinions on things, and some of them are really great to work with. A lot of them are really great to work with, and even when you have conflicts, they're more than happy to listen to our feedback, and they are really open to doing that. And it's only through a really positive relationship with them that you can actually achieve some of those things, and they're more likely to give you some of those things. Don't get me wrong, it's a challenging relationship, but if you keep them sweet, you're more likely to get what you want.
Thank you for that absolutely fantastic analogy at the end of just keeping them sweet. I'm sure.
Am I right to just jump in on one thing? I just wanted to kind of give an example of kind of how maybe a project that's a bit more, I don't know, collaborative, but over the years. So basically, obviously, we all know about the Team GB partnership, and how a lot of students got very confused about said partnership from the beginning. So what happened was basically there was a Team GB steering group that had a president on, and they were giving their input and things like that, but it wasn't necessarily directly from students, and that input wasn't coming directly from students, and there was still that confusion there. So last year, a motion, as Evie's been mentioning, came through from a student to say that there needed to be a Team GB student panel that could directly feed into this student group, the steering group, and have a bit more of a student, student eye on what the partnership was, and what was happening, why it was happening, and if students would actually engage with it. So basically, that's something that I kind of picked up going into my role, as it happened at the end of the last term. So again, as Evie mentioned, if you've been given a motion and it's passed, then that's something that the next president needs to carry on. So obviously happily to pick that up. So in that sense, we obviously created an application, an interview, and then we've actually got a 10 student panel for Team GB, so that they can have a direct student input on that steering group, which then directly inputs the actual partnership. So I think that's a really good example of how obviously there was maybe a lack of teamwork, communication at the beginning, how our students changed it, how then now we've created this really positive thing that's really impacting this massive part of the university. So just wanted to put that in there.
Thank you. You're very welcome to put that in. Personally, seeing how the Team GB partnership has kind of shaped has just been really nice to see, because I will admit, when it was first announced, I had no clue what was going on with it. I did not understand it in the slightest. Okay, so we're on the home stretch now. We only have 3 questions left. So the first question of these 3 is for Sian and Ellis, and I think you can tell what question is going to be coming here. When will sports and societies start up again?
Ellis, do you wanna hop in?
What's this time?
Well, obviously, there's a lot riding on the roadmap and the provisional dates that the government has given. But if they do stick to that roadmap, we will also be sticking to that roadmap. So from particularly a sporting side, from the 29th, we should be able to have outdoor facilities being opened. So you can get back on courts, get back on the fields, on the AstroTurf, whatever else you use. But also by kind of opening that availability up to almost the wider student population, so more student groups. So in that sense, we'd be potentially activities and societies can come and book the outdoor space to do some physical activity as well, as indoor restrictions are still quite tight at the moment. So obviously you've got the 29th of March, outdoor facilities opened, and I'm going to get this wrong. 12th of April, I believe, is the opening of like indoor gyms and indoor facilities, but only for individual and household usage. But then in that case, you can go to the gym, obviously, with your house or by yourself. You can book a badminton court if you wanted to play badminton with your house. That's just an example. Then the 17th of May, group indoor activity and fitness groups should restart, obviously, depending on whether the roadmap's stuck to. So that means, obviously, kind of indoor activity comes back again. Maybe, for example, you could just train with your team rather than with your house. So those kind of restrictions get lifted a little bit. And then on the 21st of June, fingers crossed, everything crossed on my whole body, we can kind of get all the restrictions lifted and get back to what we call normal. So hopefully we can get all that back. But obviously it's that's from a sports side, but for our activity side, it would all be in guidance with government guidelines with indoor spaces, obviously room restrictions, kind of going back to what we did September, October time, where we had those 6 weeks with slight restrictions, but potentially the light at the end of the tunnel that some sport and activities can start happening again by the end of the year. But fingers crossed.
Yeah, for society, it's more the end of the roadmap, unfortunately. But that's why we're looking at maybe seeing if we can get more societies involved in maybe some like recreational sports. So things like rounders, nothing like major athletes would attend to, but something fun and cute and like just so we can get out in the sun and not be in our bloody rooms anymore. So it's just looking at seeing what we could offer and what people might want, but obviously hoping for that end of the tunnel and hitting that 21st, you know, going out and going to the pub, maybe welly, you know, things like that. So it's just praying for the roadmap.
And asylum. We should promote our own places as well.
Yeah, Sankin Asylum. And Spa.
That might be helpful, you know. All right, so moving on to the next one. What is the accessibility reporting tool?
I'm happy to take this one, Joe. So yeah, I know I've had a few students ask me this, and so I think it's really good to get the word out there. So the accessibility reporting tool. So there's one that is digital, which is to do with IT. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. There's a physical one, and that is for any student who is on campus, and if they face, and for example, if you have a wheelchair user, somebody with a physical disability, etc., and they need an item of equipment or something and it's not worked. So a stair lift, a standard lift, it could be some furniture has been moved in a way that's inaccessible, you know, a hearing loop isn't working, etc. And what it basically is if you go on the support portal, which is on the landing page, or you can go via the Uni full website, scroll down to accessibility, and it is report a physical accessibility issue. So the idea is that it will direct you straight to the estates team. The estates team are the people that manage campus. So you can go, for example, the stair lift in I've forgotten the name of the building now. In X building, I don't know, Wilberforce in can see the building in my head. I can't think of which one it is. It's the Applied Science, that's it. The Applied Science building isn't working, or the Wilberforce lift isn't working. This is the date, here's a picture. Then the estates team should get back to you via email and then sort of keep you in the loop as to when it's fixed. So I know a lot of students who've got disabilities don't necessarily know where to find it, or some people don't know it exists. I've heard that as well. But if you go on the support page, physical accessibility issue, and it will give you all the information there. But I'd really encourage any student who has an issue to do it, because it can really help them solve the issues and know where there's faulty stuff going on. So that's what it is. But happy for anyone, if they see this, to message me afterwards and ask for more info, or to give them a link.
Awesome. Thank you, Eve. Okay, so we are on to our last question here. You can all breathe a sigh of relief. It's a nice one, you know. We're going to be reflecting on kind of, you know, what are some of the positives that you've actually managed this year? So the question is, so let me just make sure I get the word in right. I don't want to sound like a moron. As we come to the end of your term as president, you know, what's one thing you're proud of that you've done this year? What's one thing you're proud of? And I know it's quite a tough question. Oh, go on, Phoebe. I can see you're dying to go.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I'm proud of, I'm guessing Evie's going to say, because we did it together. So I'm going to let her pick that one up. That's a bit of a cheat, isn't it, really? And I'm going to say a different one. And I would say that I'm proud that we have got through it. That we've mostly got through a really difficult year, and most of the issues that the students come to us that are realistic, that, you know, that are reasonably we're able to achieve, we have achieved. So accommodation fee waivers, no detriment policy, safety net policy, reopening of the library. Obviously there are still bits to work on around that. We're still continuing to lobby for partial refunds or full refunds of tuition fees and various other things that I know that students care about a lot. But there are several things there that lots of other universities and unions have not achieved at all. You know, several universities have not got a no detriment policy, have not had accommodation fee waivers, and me and Simeon have worked really hard all year to try and make sure we're representing students. So I would say I'm mildly proud that we've done an okay job given how difficult it's been.
You've done an absolutely fantastic job. Obviously this year's been tough, but the fact that we've all made it through, we're all relatively still sane, we're all able, I think that's a massive, massive win. Go on, Eve.
Yeah, I think I know what he was going to say. I think a lot of things, it's difficult to say, oh, I'm proud of it, because it's in the making, and I'm like, I might be saying this now and it'll be done in 2 months or whatever. So I think I'd say I'm proud of a lot of things that have started, even if they don't finish, because I think that's still a massive thing. The thing I was going to say is consent training. I feel like I say this all the time. It will literally be up so soon, and it is available to all students on my journey, and it's so obviously this is something that me and Phoebe have worked really hard on, and it started when I was a student, so it's been going on a while, and I just really like it because it's really inclusive, it's really myth busting, and you know, it's come straight from, you know, what some survivors have told me that they want other people to know. So I feel like it's really genuine, it's got important information there, and I've worked really hard to make it, you know, LGBT inclusive, to make it myth busting. And I just think it's quite thorough, and I'm really proud of that. And I think another thing that specifically for my own projects that I've done that I'm quite proud of is, and it's a really small thing, but I recently did a survey, which was basically me having a bit of panic, going, I was elected on a manifesto. Am I out of touch? Do people like what I'm doing? And I did this a few weeks ago, and it was basically, here's my project. What do you think of them? How does it relate to your priorities? And I was really pleased because every single person that responded said, I think you're doing the right things. That sounds like a bigging myself up, but they said this is a priority. And to me, I thought, in a COVID year, I got elected like 2 weeks or whatever before lockdown. It was quite intense, but every single person said, I think your campaigns around closed captions, around sexual assault, around LGBT mental health, whatever it was, they thought that it was in the right place. And I think I'm really proud that I've check students' priorities and that I do seem to be doing the stuff they want to do. So consent training and also the survey as well would be my comeback.
Awesome. Anybody else want to go, Sean?
So I'm gonna do kind of two. One, just an overall vague one. Obviously, as I've said before, just massively proud of our student groups and especially our sport clubs, just because. So, like, one of the questions I was asked before, obviously, we were straight into lockdown after we got elected, was what is president of sports without the sports? And I think the clubs kind of went in with what is our club without the actual physical activity of our club. And everyone, and I mean literally everyone, has blown it out of the water, whether that be through virtual socials, fundraising events, online, like women's rugby did like how to fall safely and things like that on Zoom, and it's actually crazy how creative our groups have been, and it honestly has blown me away. And then for a very specific one, I think obviously Joe, you were involved in it, but our Movember campaign just blew last year's out of the water, and all past years as well. But we raised, I've just got the total here, £21,000 and £21,075 as a total, and it literally blows my mind how generous and how engaged student groups were, and obviously loads of guys came forward to be a part of the Movember video, and all the mixed teams and the female dominant teams that came forward to support the movement as well, and we just literally blew it out of the water. And it was a very proud month when we'd literally just gone back into the second lockdown. So really hope that next year we can just carry on building that, and over the next couple of years really hit out of the park again and again and again, because it is really important. And I think we've done just an incredible job throughout the whole year in the sense of sports. So that's mine.
I guess Phoebe already listed my stuff, so I was like, what am I going to say now? Because from the very start of the year, I was working on trying to get some sort of no detriment policy for students, particularly because it's my belief that that went down really well with students with mental health issues in terms of supporting them. I know that it's not because it's not the fact that they were always going to need a no deadline policy or some sort of safety net, or they're going to need 14 extra days to always complete their assignments, but it's that kind of calm, that sense of calm that comes along with having some sort of support structure in place that then enables you to be able to actually focus on doing work with less anxiety. And I think that that is a part of having those sort of things in place that sometimes doesn't always get captured as part of decision making. People are more focused on whether it's appropriate or not, and not looking at whether students are dealing with anxiety or and things like that. So, I mean, I was happy that that finally went through, although I would have hoped to get earlier. So that was a good thing to have. Yeah, the library is open again. So that is really massive. I would again have hoped to have that open much sooner. It's been a really difficult time for students. I wouldn't be able to imagine studying without the library. I know that whenever I really needed to get stuff done, I mean, if we weren't trying to be PG here, it wouldn't be stuff I would use. I'll use the other S word. But yeah, but if I wanted to really get stuff done, I wouldn't be sat on my couch trying to do that. I would go to the library to do. I remember I completed my dissertation, like when I wanted to really do my dissertation, because as an international student, there are limits to how many hours I can work and stuff. So when I started my role, I kind of started whilst I was doing my dissertation with limited hours and all that. So I really needed to get my dissertation done, and I booked off like 2 weeks and went to the library and finished a master's thesis within 2 weeks of steadily going to the library. And I just picture any other student who's in my shoes trying to do their thesis at home. I had 3 systems open. I had my laptop open and I sat at one of those systems with 2 screens. And each of them, one would have a journal, one would have a table with data, and then my laptop would be where I was typing everything. So I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for students over the past few months trying to get stuff done at home. The medical students who are approaching their final exams, and there's just lots of students with who I'm just glad this finally got opened, and I hope that students don't get negatively impacted by the fact that it's taken this long, and that still kind of helps them anyway. So yeah, this will be my kind of 2 or 3. Did I subtly mention 3?
I think I'd like to really, really reiterate what Sian said, because if you look at it from the society side as well, student media are fully operating online, and that's something that scared me originally going into it, being like, is it going to hurt them? Absolutely not. Jam Radio thriving, Torch is thriving, doing things online, Hull Fire are doing great, loads of articles, and it's working really well. You've got societies left, right, and centre absolutely smashing out the park, raising money for charity, doing all these events online, and it's just like, so many people were worried in the beginning, like, oh, we're not going to be able to do this, that, and the other. But then they've just gone, oh, we'll do this instead, and just killed it. Just like done so well. And then you've got our volunteers, like you've got volunteer projects that are dedicated to one thing, planning on doing other things just so they can get out there and volunteer. And you've got like Forces of Nature. The moment they're able to do litter picks, they're out there already doing it. They've already got them all planned. And it's just like, they're more on top of it than I ever would be as a student. Like, it's insane. So like, I'm just so proud of the way that all our students have just persevered and just gone, you know what, COVID's not a problem. Let's just do things online. We'll just do it. We'll get on with it. And just done so well. And like some of the events that I've seen from afar are great. Like Crystal Clear and their DJ sessions on a weekend and the amount of money they've raised for different charities, and like their memoriam their memoriam DJ set for Conor Macy, who was one of my friends who died this last year, was like, it was really touching and like really good to see. And like when I was in touch with his parents and a few of his friends from home, they were just like so thankful to see like all these students coming together and remembering someone. And despite all the problems that COVID's brought and all the lockdowns, they're just out there killing it. And it just, every day I see it and it just makes me like really happy to see. And it's just like, it's just really good to see all these groups just out there doing it. And yeah, my other thing would be all the little track changes I've done in my zone. That's it. Like, I haven't done anything majorly big yet. That's coming. But all the little things really will lead it. So in the future, when there's no lockdowns, it's all improved and all different, and just really modernising how the activity zone works, because it was quite untouched and not really representative of the students who were under the zone. But it'll be very different, and I just look forward to seeing it, really.
Joe, can I just say one other thing?
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, I think one other thing that we should all be proud of is, I think people don't necessarily always understand the kind of integral part that we play in the actual organisation, and kind of how involved we are in actually running HUSU. And like every organisation this last year, it's been a really big struggle. It's been a challenge, financially, amongst lots of other issues. And we've all played our part in getting a multi-million-pound organisation that is there to support students, and ultimately usually would rely on students spending money there, which obviously they haven't been able to do, to get through. And we've all done a massive part in that, but also a massive thank you to all the staff team that are behind us, that have like really helped, because behind each of us there's loads of other people supporting us. A huge thank you to all the student volunteers, like Sian and Ellis have already alluded to. There's also part-time officers who help us with everything. Everything that me and Simeon have done and Evie's done and Sian and Ellis have done it's all been on the back of that really valuable feedback from student volunteers and from their support. And we've all worked so closely with them, and they've been incredibly, you say that we're patient, they've also been really patient. They've had to come to union council meetings, which are exhausting at the best of times, but they've done them online all year, which is incredible. And a lot of the things that we've achieved wouldn't have been achievable without them. And also just a massive thank you to students generally, because this year has been exhausting and challenging, and the way that students have come together, like Sian and Ellis have already alluded to, and I think, you know, like we've said, I think the way that they've come together as a community has just meant that it's made things so much better for so many people, and it's so impressive, because I don't know if I mean, I was a student right at the end of, like, as the pandemic was starting, and did my dissertation in it, but I can't imagine doing a full year in it. And the resilience that students have shown, and the fact that they still cooperate with us, they still talk to us, you know, our inboxes are still full, that means so much to me, because they still see talking to us as valuable and you know, a way to make change, which is great. And I just think that they've done an absolutely incredible job in what has been a really difficult year. And I do massively feel for students, and, you know, we'll all continue to do everything we can to make their experience better. But, you know, just a massive thank you for everything that they've done, and the way that they have just shown not just resilience, but that community spirit, and the way that they've all pulled together to even just follow the rules. It sounds like such a basic thing, but compared to other campuses across the country, our numbers have been so insanely low. And that is not just a testament to us and the staff team and the university, it's a testament to every single student on campus. So just a massive thank you to everybody, really.
Right, that's it. We're officially out of questions. I just want to say once again, thank you to you all for making time out of your probably very busy schedule. I know you're all quite busy people and have a lot of things going on, but I just want to say thank you for everything. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.